Sorry I wasn't in class today, but here's a makeup video for the discussion for day 2 of Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. So, day 2 is racial justice, and I felt like one of the biggest factors that led to the lack of racial justice, one of the major themes that the author Stevenson touches on throughout the book, is how unfair the justice system can be due to the discretion of the people running it. And this discretion in procedure and sentencing has been abused to great effect, the Deep South, and blocks racial justice. So, just countless times throughout the story, like, the judge overrules like the life sentence to give the death penalty, right? Or just basically there's just a pattern of minority defendants just getting like the harshest sentencing possible because there's no uniformity to it. The judge can basically like use his discretion, right? This is something that's still pretty hot topic in society, right? Like most drug charges are by minorities, because if you are white and upper class, if you get caught with some drugs, if you're pulled over, like you probably will just get community service, when somebody in a poor neighborhood, might be a person of color, might get some jail time actually. One of the first examples of this is the story of Herbert, because the state decided to invoke an unprecedented theory of transferred intent to make the crime eligible for the death penalty. Herbert's lawyer was later disbarred for poor performance. It's their unprecedented theory. I don't even know how that would hold up in court, right? Like, what does that mean? It's never been tried before. They invented a legal concept to get this guy in prison. Who knows? Another thing that was really shocking to me was the quack doctor, where this guy's job basically was to deem like obviously mentally ill defendants fit to stand trial, when he was a complete fraud, and I have no idea how he managed to hide his falsehood for so long. But that story was really heartbreaking, because he just obviously was not in the right state of mind, and if there was better racial justice in the state, I don't think he would have been sitting on death row, right? And one of my sub-topics for this day was how a conviction can affect the whole community of the accused. And this is when Stevenson was talking about how the poor black community of Monroeville they all felt like they were on death row when Walter was accused, or he was imprisoned. It's just something Stevenson says himself. And a question I had for this was, what is the purpose of Walter's incarceration if it was not solely to have an arrest in the murder cold case? Was the hopelessness of the compunity an intended effect as well? I think so. I think that the prosecution wanted to intimidate the poor black community of Monroeville just for existing, which is a pattern that has been observed in the Deep South for hundreds of years at this point, literally. And my second subtopic was the lack of quality legal representation in the memoir. And several times it was mentioned that lawyers did not do so much research on the cases that Bryan later takes over, or were disbarred due to incompetence or just lack of effort. One of Bryan's story even mentions how two of the lawyers of a defendant spent the whole time before the trial just arguing about how they would be paid. So I think the root of all of this is that Alabama did not have a statewide public defender system at the time. The details of how that would even work are lost to me, since that leaves many without any legal counsel whatsoever, perhaps violating Supreme Court precedent. Like I learned in AP Gov last year, Gideon versus Wainwright definitely was in effect by this time of the 80s, of You need a public defender. You need legal counsel, right? Stevenson says, I thought how certain it was that hundreds, maybe thousands of other people were just as innocent as Walter, but would never get the help they need. And basically, that's just him talking about how the legal infrastructure definitely needs to work. That this insane miscarriage of justice should be avoided. And here's some of my open-ended questions to end this. So I had, did you agree with Stevenson quoting a thinker named Havel in his words about the need for hope is an orientation of the spirit? How necessary was hope in the process of Walter's release? I think hope was necessary, because hope got them, to have hope that he could be released is what got Stevenson involved, got his family to still fight for him. They didn't sit down and let it happen, you know. The hope got them to, wish and act for a better future. Are the horrible and inhumane prison conditions, such as the boy who was in solitary confinement for 18 years straight, another symptoms of the problems described above, of what I've talked about? Of course they are, right? It's just another factor of trying to keep the often marginalized prison community down, right? Because justice system's more focused on punishment rather than rehabilitation, right? And I think a big aspect of that is the conditions inside the prisons. Also, the 18 years thing is insane that happened in this country. That is wild to me. I gasped when I read that. And finally, does the interjections of mini stories throughout the telling of Walter's story enhance or take away from his narrative? I think it enhances it because it shows the author has dealt with cases like this much more than Walter, and it's much more of a widespread problem that kind of adds to his idea that we need to fix things around here, right? All right, thank you.